Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the Becoming Lovely podcast. I am your host, Olaoluwa and today we have a very, very special guest that I can't wait for you to hear from. But before I introduce her, I just want to encourage you to make sure that you are subscribed. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you follow and also subscribe on Spotify as well. We also love engagement, so please leave your comments below. And if you're enjoying this, make sure you share. You can tag me at Miss Olaoluwa on Instagram. I'm not really on Twitter, but you can definitely find me on Instagram. And you can find me at This is Olaoluwa on Twitter if you must. Thank you so much. And also make sure you use the hashtag Kingdom Women Do Hard Things to continue to engage with the conversation. So today we have an amazing, very, very, very beautiful guest. And I'm going to let her introduce herself because I probably wouldn't do it justice. Over to you.
Thank you for the introduction and for having me on the podcast. I'm super excited to be here and to impart whatever wisdom I have with your listeners. My name is Hannah Lovejoy. I'm a creative and a storyteller, but if you wanted to put, I don't know, a label or a title on what I do, I work as a news producer, a radio host, content editor. I wear different hats.
I love it. I love it. Oh, okay. So before we explore about how you got started in your career and just, you know, your journey, I want to give you some short fire questions. And the rule of the game is to say the first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Okay.
So we'll make it easy. Electric toothbrush or normal toothbrush?
Electric.
Okay. Favorite genre of music?
Gospel.
Oh, yes. City break or seaside or sea break?
City break.
Yes. Okay. Hot countries or cold countries?
Hot.
Tea or juice?
Tea.
Okay. Favorite film so far?
Ever?
Yeah.
Bruce Almighty.
Oh, okay. I totally want to know why.
I don't know, it was like one of the first films I ever watched so I was probably like 7 or 8. I shouldn't have been watching it. My parents were like, oh, you can watch it, it's about God, like, and what I liked about it was that like it showed like the real struggle of what it's like to actually walk with God and to be like, imagine being a human and walking in God's experience. I don't know, I thought it was funny, and Jim Carrey's kind of like, he's a loose cannon, so
yeah, he is. He totally is. And finally, Netflix or cinema?
Netflix.
Okay, to be honest, I agree with you on that. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me, Hannah. I'm so excited to dig into this conversation. But first, it would be great to just hear about yourself. So just tell me about how you got to where you are today. You know, you said you wear many hats. So if you were to put yourself in a box, what is that and where do you do it? And just expand on your intro.
So if I was to put myself in a box in terms of a career box, I would put myself in the journalism box. I feel like I've kind of outgrown that title a little bit these days because I do so many different things. But the skill set is all the skills of a journalist. So like editorial producing, research, planning, presenting, reporting, fact checking, interviewing, writing, content editing, social media, video production, all of the things. So
the whole shebang.
Yeah, so I would just put myself in, I would say I'm a freelance journalist by trade. Okay. But yeah, I do lots of different things. I work with CNN, with Premier Gospel, working on like some like other fun bits as well now. And I've worked at Smooth Radio, like just loads of different places, just kind of wherever the contracts are, I'm there. Wherever the shifts are, I'm there. And yeah, I just kind of like having variety. I don't like to box myself. I feel like we live in an age now where people can actually forge their own path and create a career that resonates with them. They don't have to just do a traditional 9 to 5. You know?
Yes, that's so true. And I think that I didn't introduce the theme of the episode, which I'll do now, but I mentioned that we wanted to talk about making good choices, and it seems like you have entered into a space where you can do multiple things and wear multiple hats. Like, how did you get there, and what was the journey like? Was it really challenging to like break into what you do now, or was it kind of just one choice at a time where it was just like, yeah, this is just going really well? How did you get here?
The short answer is that I partnered with God. And I just feel like having a vision and knowing where you want to go is that's like the most important thing, because even, and the caveat to that is, even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, having an idea of what you're passionate about and what you're interested in pursuing, and like just seeing where that goes. And I believe if it's meant for you, the door will open, and if it's not meant for you, the door will close. So it's really that simple, I think. It has not been an easy journey to get here. There's been many long shifts, many sacrifices, like skipping friends' birthdays and social events and all those kind of things, but it's paid off. I didn't go to university, so I had to work that bit harder and I feel like that's not really a story that people have. I feel like most people nowadays, like, a degree is just like the same as having like a retail job when you were 17 or 18. It's just something everyone has. And I don't know, for me, I just never resonated with that. It wasn't easy to make that decision, and there was a lot of like justification that I had to make, and like I had to make a plan to show my mum, like, oh, even though I'm not going to go to uni, this is how I'm going to get to where I want to go, and it paid off. So I just think like having a clear vision, then like if you want something enough, you make it happen, you know. Absolutely. I hope that answers your question.
No, I love that answer. And you talked about partnering with God, but one thing I wanted to ask before we talk about just what that partnering with God looks like is, did you always have this vision in your mind of what you are today, or has it been progressive? Did it start with a seed where you were just like, I don't know, I want to be on radio, or I want to be on TV, or I want to ask people questions, and then it just grew? Or was it always what you see for yourself today and what it's becoming?
I would say it's been kind of like an evolution, like you said, like a seed gets planted and then it gets watered and it grows and it becomes like this beautiful flower. And then it's been like a really interesting journey, because when I was a teenager, I was always interested in like showbiz, celebrity culture. Like my friends and I, right? Oh, I can't believe I'm going to share this. But basically, we used to go and meet celebrities for fun. Like, we would get the £2 travel card, didn't have anything else to do, so we'd be like, oh, who's at that radio station, or who's at, like, let's see if there's like a book signing, and if there was like someone that we wanted to go see, we'd go and meet them.
That is really cool.
It's so random, and there's actually a lot of people that do it. People are embarrassed by it though, they don't really share it, but
it's like a secret. It's a secret club.
Yeah, but it was kind of my first kind of glance into that world, and kind of I was like, oh, people do this as a job. And I remember my friends would be there for the celebrity, and I would be speaking to the paparazzi, I would be speaking to the journalists, I'd be speaking to the people coming in and out of the buildings, and being like, how did you get to where you are? Like, literally just like no discretion or anything, and just kind of being like, oh, let's see, like, I just am so interested in this. And I think because the school that I went to, like my high school, they didn't have media studies, so it was very hard for me to articulate what my creativity looked like, because again, my friends, they were good at singing and acting and art and drawing, and I did all of those things, but nothing quite felt like I was forcing all of those things, because that's what traditional creativity looks like. But I think creativity is so much more than that. And
absolutely,
for me, as soon as I kind of understood what media studies was, I was like, that's it. It like kind of clicked, all the things clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, it makes sense. And then I went to college, did media studies, and everything was just kind of evolved into journalism, multimedia journalism, and then radio and TV. And my heart, I'd say like my heart is for broadcast, but my purpose is digital. So it's like, how do you bridge the two? So yeah.
I love that. And so would you say that it was kind of just following those small promptings that has got you to this place now? Or was it, did you have to have like really big aha moments with yourself where God is like, hello? Like how did, because the reason why I say that is my journey has been quite similar. It's been progressive. I think I've always seen myself as a business person. And when I was younger, just before I left uni, I was like, I don't really know what I want to do, but I want to help people. I want to be creative doing it, and I want to look nice doing it. That was like my barometer for any job that I applied for. Can I do these three things? And then eventually I went into becoming part of the founding team for the company that I'm currently the COO for. We run a startup, which is like a group of businesses that empower Black women. And I never saw myself doing what I do today, but I would definitely say like that seed of always wanting to be able to help people, doing business that was socially driven was really important to me because it didn't make sense to make profit and not impact people in a positive way and add value. And I feel like it ticks those boxes, and it's still, if that vision is still evolving and getting bigger. So for you, did you have to have really big aha moments, like a dream, or was it just, following those small inklings and just going with the flow?
I would say, so because this is a Christian podcast, I feel like I can
absolutely go for it.
Not to be preaching at people, but I think it really is down to how you hear God. So for me, I'm a knower. So that looks like gut instincts, regardless of how my emotions are and how I feel about something.
Right.
Deep knowing that I'm meant to do something. And sometimes that, for me, that looks like God will give me the end goal and will show me what the end result is, but I don't know the logistics of how it's gonna play out. So then that's my stumbling block that I have to work through, about being progressive and trusting that God will open each door as it's meant to open at the right time. And there have been times where I've rushed ahead of God and I've unnecessarily put myself under strain, where God's like, if you just sat and you just rested and you were actually just like, you're meant to be a knower, so if you know, then why don't you just rest and just do what I tell you as I tell you to do it. And I think it's just that thing though of like, especially being in media and being in like, I guess maybe the tech world's a bit like that too, and like the creative industry is like, you've always got to feel like you're doing something or putting something out, or like, oh, am I missing opportunity if I'm not constantly working? And that's something that I've wrestled with personally. So for me, like, my vision was that, okay, this is the skill set I have, this is what I'm interested in. And then God started saying, okay, so radio. So my heart has always been radio. My first ever work experience internship was at Capital FM. So so God was like, we're not playing small, we're gonna go straight in with your and that's what I'm saying about being partnered with God. When you know, and things always plan out how they're meant to happen when it's meant for you. So I just think for me personally, it's been a combination of having a deep knowing about what the end goal is, but then trusting that God in like the everyday and in the little progressive things, and let it play out how it's meant to play out instead of trying to overthink it and figure it out. Because one thing I will say, I used to sit and try and think of and ask so many people for advice and be like, how did you get to where you are? And every single person's story is different. With media specifically, there's no correct way to get into the industry. So say if you wanted to be a doctor or a teacher, you know that there's a set path to follow, a amount of study, placement and all of that, and then you graduate and then you get your dream job. With media, it is literally time, it's like preparation meeting timing and opportunity. So it's about being prepared for when the time and the opportunity arises. So it's just staying prepared.
I love that. And I think there's this ideology that life is much like a river, right? So there are some parts of a river that run really, really fast and the water flows really fast. And there are other parts of the river that are really calm and it's more gentle. And I think it's just discerning the pace that you're supposed to go at, especially when you're walking with God on like a God vision. It's not really our own vision, he's given it to us. So then like following that flow and doing it at his pace is so crucial. And choosing to do that it can be really challenging, because you can feel like everybody else is running ahead of you and you're like, okay, I'm still here. But, you know, like being faithful in those seasons is so important, and it actually ends up developing and building our character, and forming us into the people that we're supposed to be. So I love that. I really, really love that. So I have a question. If you were the love child of 3 of your most, of the people that you are inspired by the most, who will your parents be?
Oh, how many? 2 or 3?
3.
Okay. Okay, so first I'm gonna have to say Maya Angelou. She's so full of wisdom. I feel like she's lived so much life, and I just feel like there's just so much there's always so much to learn. Even though she's passed, you can read one of her books, you can watch one of her interviews, and there's just always something fresh. There's always like a fresh revelation, and I just feel like her story is so unique, and she redeemed her story by sharing it, and she's a storyteller, and I just really respect her, really love her. And then I'm gonna go with Lauryn Hill, because she literally made the best album of all time. Like, to have that much success from one album in this day and age, and for it to continue to do so well, there's a certain amount of I don't know, that's just like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and just like a very unique perspective to kind of walk. And I remember hearing her speak once and say, the reason why I don't release music continuously is because I need to live life and experience things, otherwise it's not authentic. And I thought that's so good, because people are so, like, especially in like the media world, they're just obsessed with putting out content, and she's thinking about quality and life experience over quantity, all of that. And she can do what she wants. She's living her best life. Like, she showed up like late to every single concert. I paid some big money to be there, and I was like, hey,
people still pay.
Exactly. So
it's Lauryn Hill.
Exactly. So I would say Lauryn Hill. I feel like she carries a lot of wisdom too. And then this one's gonna be random, Michael Todd, because he's like spiritual, but he's also a storyteller, and like I just feel like his thing is like complete submission and obedience to God, because his journey was, again, he wanted to work in music, and now look at what he's doing and the impact he's having for the kingdom. And that took radical obedience and sacrifice, and now you see how God is using his gifting for music to release and create songs with transformation, and you can just see the impact he's having in the world. And I'm like, I see that, and I love to see people who are real and authentic, and people who can speak to a generation in a way that it's never been done. And I feel like so I'm gonna go with Michael Todd.
I love that, because I think, so I started asking this question on my last episode with one of my friends, Misha, and I said that mine were Oprah Winfrey.
She would have been my 4th one, by the way. She's on my list. I literally wrote it down. I was like, Oprah. But
I said Oprah Winfrey, TD Jakes, and Brene Brown.
So good.
And I felt
very similar. Like,
right.
Super similar.
And I feel like, so you've mentioned wisdom again and radical obedience to God. And I felt like the thread for all of the people that I chose was their ability to communicate like these internal things that people experience, and the wisdom that they're able to use to now help people evaluate those experiences. So for you, I guess like wisdom is a really strong thing in your life, and it's like a theme of your own life, I guess. Would you say that?
100%.
And I guess, does that mean for you that you kind of see your life panning out like them, or what are the themes of their lives that you would say, actually, this is definitely something that I identify in my own life, outside of, you know, understanding that they're all wise and they all obey God? Like, what are some of those themes that you could pick up and say, yeah, that's me?
So God's actually challenging me in this season to like be open to a pivot, be open to like the evolution of a dream, and maybe things looking different to how I thought they would look. And again, that radical obedience and sacrifice. And for me, I'd say the thing that resonates with me about all three of those people is, one, their commitment and their sacrifice and obedience to living a life of purpose and impact. So they were not so one thing that God's been teaching me in this season is that for my life personally, it's impact over influence. We live in an influence generation, and influence is good, but it fluctuates, right? So, you know, you could, okay, let's use like someone from Love Island as an example. They could be a hot commodity, and they could post something on Instagram about, I don't know, like hashtag ad, get this discount code. People will go and flock and buy it because that's like their influence over people. But then if they post one thing or say one thing out of line and it gets misconstrued, everyone's like, oh no, not on it. Like, exactly. And then they get dropped. So then, and they're not respected in the same way. Whereas impact is like, the vision I have is like a bumper car. It's like a moment. So it's like this. So it's kind of like where you change someone's life, or someone experiences something and it stays with them and they never forget that one experience or that one encounter. For me, that's what I'm called for, to create moments of impact for people, like to be maybe a catalyst, or to be, you know, that thing that makes people question and go, oh, maybe I could actually do that, or like, you know. So I think it's the wisdom, the obedience, the impact, and the leadership, and just seeing how they help people walk into their destinies, or encourage people to kind of just be themselves and stay true to who they are and what they're meant to do. I think that's something that all three of those people do so well.
This is so interesting, because my next question was going to be about the sort of impact that you want to have on the world, and I can totally see why impact is so important, because life is, especially life today and how people frame it, it's very fast paced, it's very go, go, go. But if you're making more calculated decisions and choosing to slow it down, you will see that you have, like, it enables you to tap into the wisdom of God to understand how to impact people in a way that's stronger than just influencing them and having, you know, a moment where everyone's talking about it, but long term, how does that impact the souls of people? And I really love what you were saying about really marrying that with obedience, because sometimes the fear of the kind of impact you will have
I don't even think about it. I just say, God, what do you want me to do? And then I do it, because I think if we get caught up in thinking about that, it's a dangerous and sticky ground to walk, because it's about that whole influence thing, right? Everyone's obsessed with numbers. How many likes did I get? Can I monetize my social media? Can I monetize my lifestyle? What's wrong with having a 9 to 5? There's nothing wrong with having, like, if that's the part you want, that's great. And this is coming from a creative, a freelancer. Like, I live my best life and work the craziest hours, but that's just the nature of the industry I'm in. But I'm saying that to say, like, people are so obsessed with like numbers and people's opinion, and it's like, yeah, I think if you think about those things too much, it will it will limit the impact that you can actually have, and I also think that it will just get to you mentally and psychologically, and it will just wear you down, and you'll never feel like you're good enough. Eventually, you might feel like it for a second, but the second someone doesn't agree with something you say, or you don't see comments where people are praising you, you can't live your life like for people, you know. You have to live your life for you and God. So and
it is that over analysis of those really small things that begins to it takes away from what you're building. And so God is looking at things like he sees the details, but he's also looking at things on a macro level.
Right.
So when you're like, this little thing just won't go right, he's just like, yeah, but look at the bigger picture. Look at what I'm trying to do in you.
You're speaking to me right now,
in this city, or in your workplace, or in your family. Like, it's beyond you. And I think there's this book called Kryptonite by John Bevere, and he talks about the impact that, you know, our own, not just like, he talks about sin, but because it's about kryptonite, but it made me think about the impact of our little choices, whether obedience or disobedience, have this ripple on effect on almost everything. And you almost begin to realize that everything is connected, not in like in a new agey sort of way, but like in a sense that God has made things to connect.
What's the time?
Yeah, literally. Everything is supposed to connect and be in a rhythm. And so when we come out of that, we're forfeiting something. And oftentimes it's the good for, you know, what feels nice presently.
Indeed.
Yeah. I love these sort of questions. And I guess that leads me on to my next thing that I wanted to ask you, which was about success and how you define success. Because for you, I'm sure you have people that look at you like, wow, like you've met so-and-so, that's amazing. Or you're on the radio, you're on TV. And broadcasting is not easy at all. So how do you define success? What does that look like for you?
So I think for me, so I'm a 1 on the Enneagram. I don't know if you agree with the Enneagram. I don't know if you like the Enneagram.
I like the Enneagram.
Yeah, okay. So I'm a 1 with a wing 2. So perfectionist, strong convictions, wants to do everything right the first time.
Yeah.
And for me, that looks like integrity. And especially in this day and age, especially in this generation, especially in the industry I'm in, there have been so many opportunities to compromise and get ahead a bit quicker, but it would have challenged my morals too much. So I turn down opportunities quite often, actually. And maybe I'm not living to the full capacity that I could, but there's like, I'm in a season of life where it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Oh
yeah,
I'm gonna quote that
honestly. And there was this other thing, it's on my prayer journal. There's like these little cards that you can get from Paper Chase, you know, the little postcards. They've got little some of them are really cringe, but this one was like, I was like, oh, I like this. It said, you can do anything but not everything.
Yeah.
So being a perfectionist, wanting to do everything all the time and do it well and do it right, that is something that, again, God's been challenging me with, like, just rest, just trust the process. So to me, success looks like having integrity. And that might not be a popular answer, it might be a weird answer, but for me, it's like God always will honor that and will give you an opportunity and open a door that no one can ever shut, because and it will align with your purpose. And I see that in my radio show. Like, God literally gave me the desire of my heart, which was to be a presenter, in a way that glorifies him and uplifts other people and encourages people. And I'm like, that's it, that's exactly what I want to do with that. It's not about like doing things for the clout and for having loads of Instagram followers or having a collaboration with a fast fashion brand. Like, that's not who I am. That's not what I'm meant to do. And that's fine, those things are great, but for me, success looks like integrity. So
yes, that's so good. And everything you've been saying reminds me of this other saying that people have, you know, others may, you may not.
Ooh, I like that.
Right, you know. And one thing that comes to mind is just this understanding that with integrity, it starts off, it's kind of like the mustard seed that becomes the oak tree. You know, you never know how much it pays off until it really pays off. And it's like that compound interest that the Lord honors you for when you're integral to integral to the way he wants you to live your life, integral to your Christian values, integral to people doing what you said you would do, not doing what you said you wouldn't do.
Obedience.
So important, so important. And I guess making the choice to be like that can make you stick out like a sore thumb in this sort of industry. How do you manage being set apart in that sort of way? Have you found it difficult? Have you gotten over it? And you're just like, this is just who I am. Like, what's that been like?
So I'd say when I was younger, it was really hard. So I'm like 25 now, but I've been working in this industry for like 8 years, since I was 17. Yeah. So when I first started out, it was really hard because I was starstruck. I was like, you know, like the star eye emoji, that was literally me walking around all the time with like stars in my eyes, like just absolutely in awe of like the sheer magnitude of like all these amazing things and all these fun events and all of this stuff. And those things are great and there's nothing wrong with them, and I love that and I really enjoyed that time. But I always wrestled with my greater purpose, which was like knowing that I'm called to impact the kingdom. And that's not everyone's assignment. That doesn't look like that for everyone. Like God puts people in culture, and God has put me in culture. And I just think it's about knowing your why. And it's about knowing, you know, if God's placed me here, it's obviously for a reason, and it's to, and our, you know, every single Christian, our purpose. So it's like, I don't know if you know who Paula Faris is. She was a co-anchor of Good Morning America, and she was also a co-anchor on The View. No, and she wrote a book called Faith and Calling, and she was talking about basically how like calling has become like a Christian buzzword and we've overcomplicated it. And she was like saying about how there's like a faith calling and a vocational calling, and so often we get them mixed up, but actually like our faith, like our vocation is simply, this is the way she puts it, she says vocation is simply a vehicle in which God will use you, and that will change throughout your life. So in one season you could be a journalist, in another season you could be a teacher, in another season you could be a mechanic. You don't know, but your faith calling is to love God and love people, or whatever that looks like personally for you. You know, as Christians, like I guess most of us would say love God, love people, and it's that never changes. So it doesn't matter where God puts you, that will never change. And it's just about representing Christ and being Christ-like and showing love to people, and to be an example of the kingdom of God wherever God places you. So I think once I learned that, I was like, I'm called to be in these spaces and I can show up as I am, and that's okay. But that's something I've probably come to terms with very recently, actually. And I'm just like kind of walking full steam ahead. I'm like, yeah, I'm the Christian girl. Yeah, I'm the one with the Spanish gospel radio show. It makes no sense. I'm not even Spanish. But do you know what? God put me there for a reason. And I'm okay with that. And like, I've just seen like by me being who I am, it opens, and also not like shoving faith down people's throat, but leading by example. So living that life of integrity, making decisions that are based on my faith, and saying, you know, I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to do that, but this is my hard boundary, like, or I'm not going to take that opportunity. Like, I've seen that because of that, God will open more doors, God will honor you for being obedient, and also it opens up the conversation with people who are not believers. And people look at you and they can't quite put your finger on why it is that you're different, but they can just see like the Spirit of Christ and the Holy Spirit dwelling in you. And that speaks to them, I think. So seeing that, and once you experience that and you see that kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say success, but like just you being successful, partnering with God, people are naturally drawn to that, and then it opens up that conversation. Not to like do like straight hard evangelism, because not everyone is called to that. It gives you opportunities to share your faith, and you don't know what seed you're planting. So that's the other thing, we don't, with our faith, we don't always see the fruit of the seeds we plant. And I used to feel a lot of pressure to kind of feel like, oh no, but like that God's put me in this environment, so I have to make everyone a Christian, because that's like, again, it's like the pressure of the church and like the capital C church, right? And like Christian culture is like, you have to rep Christ wherever you go, and it's like, you can actually just be a normal person, wear some fake eyelashes, wear your heels, and it's all good. You know what I'm saying? You can go out with your friends, it's not whatever, it's about just living a life of integrity though. So
have this conversation a lot with people, and I call it living for them from the middle, because the reality is that when we die, we will be known by like our souls. You know, we have our spirits. The flesh is dealt with, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be known by our personality and the uniqueness of who we are that God puts in us, and that comes out in our expression on earth, like through whatever way. And I think sometimes people get so bogged down with trying to look like how everybody else is walking out their discipleship journey, their journey of being a follower of Christ, that they don't engage with and even look at how God wants to express himself uniquely through them. Is so important, and it's something that I'm always challenged by, like, how authentic am I being in this moment? Is this really me? And is this me being true to my identity in Christ and how he's made me to be? You know, whatever you were talking about Enneagrams, my default is a 2, right? With wings. I think I've got 4 and 6 as wings. I've forgotten. I think so.
So it would be like a 2 and then a wing 1 or wing 3.
Yeah.
So like
wing 1 and wing 3. Yeah.
Okay, so the achiever and the
yeah.
helper, yeah.
But then my nature is the helper, you know, really just like really joyful, helpful and stuff like that. And I have, especially you know, working in a startup, being in the business tech world, I've struggled with having traits that are more deemed as more soft and you know, like malleable, and how you have to be strong businesswoman.
It's hard, especially as like a woman of color or whatever, like
and
being then a woman of faith and all of that, because then you think like, oh, these people are going to think I'm emotional, and then it's journalism's the same, like everyone's like really like heat of the moment, and then they're like, oh, sorry about that, like after it's like do you know, and I'm like, it's cool, like don't worry. But I think it's like, it's so easy to just like take things personally. So it's about really, like you said, just being, I think that's why it's important to stay true to who you are, because those things always change. And if your world around you is constantly changing but you are never shaken, what does that say about you and who you are and about your faith? Do you know what I mean? And just honoring who you are and showing up as you are, that's all you can do. And I think as long as you do that.
I have a friend who works in A&E, and he's a doctor there, and literally people ask him, so why are you always happy? This is a crazy ward. It's a crazy ward. Why are you always happy? And he's like, guys, I have no other explanation than Jesus. Like, I should
joy of the Lord is my strength and whatnot.
Literally, he's like, I should literally be running around with a loose head, like a headless chicken, but God keeps me grounded. And it becomes a witness. People are like, okay, tell me more about how you're able to manage all of this and stay calm and not be anxious and all these things. So I definitely, I see how all of that is connected. What about failures? Like, what are some of the things that you've failed in on your journey to becoming? Because, you know, that evolution of who you are also requires you to make bad steps as well, where you're just like, God, that probably wasn't you. And okay, definitely too much there. Like, what has that been like? What are some of the failures that you've definitely learned really key lessons from?
My main one has been overworking and burnout and not honoring boundaries that I set. And at the end of the day, that's why I'm saying I set my own boundaries. So if people go beyond that and then I let them, that's on me. That's not on them. So it's about having self-awareness. So that was the first one. I've experienced burnout like twice in my career because, again, overworking, overcommitting, this thing of like freelancing and always feeling like, oh, I need to do the work because like, what is next month going to look like? There's never a guarantee. And just constantly worrying too much about like whether I'll be rebooked or whether there'll be more shifts or whether, like, so that's for me, that's what my struggle has been, learning to balance that. God's going to always bring provision and there's always going to be work for you, and it's okay to rest. You know, I'm part Nigerian. Like, Nigerian culture is very you're book and then go out and work, and it's like even on the weekend it's like work, do something.
Literally.
There's my mom's half Nigerian. She grew up part of her teen years in Nigeria, so
yeah, it's like this spirit of hustle.
It really is, and it's just and it's great, and it's what's got me to where I am. But at the same time, it's like learning that that's not sustainable long term, and you will burn out if you don't have boundaries. For me personally, that's what my journey has looked like. So I think having self-awareness is a really key thing that I've learned from my failures. And my failures, I would say, like, if I was to define it, would literally just be like, it's kind of, I guess it's like a people-pleasing mentality, maybe, always wanting to do the best and be the best. Again, one on the Enneagram, perfectionism, wanting to always like do everything and please everyone and that's like where the wing 2 comes in, being you know, wanting to please people and wanting to help people, but you can't give and you can't pour into people and you can't help serve a vision if you are like running at 50% capacity, 30% capacity. Will eventually burn out. So you need to always give from a place of overflow, and that looks like self-care. It looks like self-preservation. It looks like time, like intentional time with God every day. It looks different for everyone, but like the core of that is like self-awareness. So being aware of like what your limitation is, being aware of like saying, actually, in that situation, that was on me. Because I think that's the other thing. So many people are not self-aware. People blame, project on other people. But if you can master self-awareness, then you can basically do anything, because you're like, okay, how is my decision making impacting this situation, and what decision can I make next that will change the situation for the better for me personally. So I hope that answered your question.
It does. And even while you're talking, I'm thinking about this picture I saw on Instagram. I think it was literally last night. I was telling my friend about it because we talk about this rest and being able to self-care a lot. It was this picture, 2 stick men. One stick man has half battery, still green, half battery over him. And one stick man is on red, and like the battery's basically gone. And the caption was, you're supposed to take a break when you get to half battery, not when you get to red. And it's so important that we learn that, because if you empty yourself out every single time, it will take time for you to reboot and get to a place where you can function healthily again. And people don't take that into consideration. I think it's especially in this generation, because we're constantly being fed with so much information, so much stimulation, we don't think about what kind of toll that takes on our soul and actually looking after ourselves, because that is the part of us that now perceives and understands and interprets even God. So, you know, we have the spirit, and God like filters the message through our spirit to our soul. But if our soul is broken down, weary, tired, we're going to interpret things in a wrong sort of way. So I feel you on that. I think that's a really, really key learning, especially on your journey. And to be honest, if you master that now, how far would you go? Because by the time you're in your 40s, you'd be so intentional about what you say yes to and what you don't, because you're literally, you will have learned to master or still be mastering your life and the rhythms of what is required of you. So yeah, I love that. I really, really love that. Okay, so we're rounding up. This has been such a good conversation.
I love this conversation. You again. It's so
good. Thank you again for coming on. I love these sort of conversations. Can you share what your biggest win is so far?
Okay. So like practically, or like physically, like a moment, or like a job, or like
do you know what? Like whichever one, it's kind of hard. I would say go for whichever one you would want to go for, because it will be interesting to see if it's a job or if it's like a soul thing, or like, yeah.
So I think they kind of go hand in hand, and I kind of mentioned them, but One is I'd say maybe like fulfilling purpose. I feel like I'm fulfilling purpose, and I feel like the sacrifices, the obedience, all of that has paid off, and to live in purpose and to see the fruit of it is a blessing. So to describe that practically, I would say like my radio show, for example. I had a hunch that I was going to get a hosting gig. I had never done hosting. Like I'd done bits of like, you know, like community radio and stuff like that, building experience, a little bit of video here and there, but nothing like consistent, like week to week, you know, because that's the path of people in the industry. But, you know, when God authors your story does not look like everyone else's, and that's okay. And I basically, there was a show, and it was like, here's a Spanish gospel show, do you want it? And I said yes. Give God your yes, the impact it has, and the blessing that is to people. Like I said, I'm Nigerian and Irish, British born, like mixed race. Like that's not my culture. I did Spanish in school. I didn't do well in Spanish in school. Like, you know, hola, like adios. I don't know. Like that was my full extent of Spanish before this show. And I just don't know what God's doing here, because it's so special. It's this little 2 hours every week, and I get to like interview some artists, and I'm learning so much about this like underrepresented genre of music. It's the only Christian Latin show in the UK, as far as I'm aware. And it's starting to get traction abroad, and I'm like, what? Like that's so. And these people are so grateful that there's a platform like in Europe and in an English speaking country that is like putting them out there. And I'm just like so fascinated by how my obedience and me feeling like, oh, I'm not qualified, like God equips the called, and like not feeling qualified enough, or like I should be there, but yet God somehow put me there and is allowing me to be a vessel to empower and encourage people and to put out this music for people to hear. So that's been really special. And then like even on the other side of that, just personally, like it like has given me some amazing friends, and like has like connected me with like my now church, which is like they're based in, even though it's so random, the digital age. My church is based in Orange County in California.
Wow.
But I'm part of like the online campus, and like that, like even that to me, that's just like crazy. But that all came from like my radio show, and like it's like there's more to that story, but like yeah, it's just so interesting to me, all the connections and all the things and the intricacies of God and the intentionality of God. And I'm like, wow, I thought I was just fulfilling a dream. Like God was honoring me by allowing me to do broadcasting, and allowing me to like, you know, like share the gospel and encourage people in some way. But actually, like even personally, just like the blessing that's been for me in my own life, that's been my biggest win. Because
I love that.
So crazy.
Do you know what? I think that speaks to just this very strong message that we know of, even as believers, we know it. But I think when it now begins to happen, it's just like, oh, like God really is faithful, right? So you know he is, but then now you know he is by experience, because you've seen how you've sown, and you've seen how he's literally taking those small seeds, the mustard seeds of faith, and multiplied it and giving you back a harvest. He's like, here you go. Thank you for following me. Thank you for listening. Like I would honor your obedience. I would honor your sacrifice. And it's always beautiful to see that, because it's another reminder that God, you are faithful. And so when there's a bigger project that requires more faith, guess what? You're going to be like, okay, God, let's do this.
And I feel like sometimes, so this is the other thing I've been learning, so I'm in a season where God's showing me the next, and I'm so overwhelmed by it, but it's so do you know who Stephanie Ike is? Yeah. So our good sis, she said this thing during a sermon. I saw on Instagram, and it was like along the lines of, we will question God and we'll doubt like what God's doing, and like, oh, I'm not capable, like how could you ask me to do that, how could you use me to do that? And she said, all you have to do is God saying to you, look back, have you not seen what I've done and where I've brought you from and where I've brought you to? And if I did that before, why would I not do it again? So why are you doubting me? And I was like, that really challenged me.
That hit me right here.
Right? It's really sending for me. I was like, girl, yeah.
You're reading my mail right now.
Literally, you're in my business. But yeah, it's just one of those things of like, when you look back, it's not to get caught up in the past or like, you know, anything like that, but you know, if there's like a moment where you doubt God or you doubt those are, again, normal things. Like, we all fluctuate in our faith and feel like maybe we're not called to it, or did I hear God correctly? Because I can't, like, the natural doesn't line up with what I'm seeing in the spiritual.
And finally, because I think there have been so many wisdom nuggets in this whole entire conversation, but if you were to round it up and give three top tips for someone who identifies with your journey, is on a similar journey, or wants to learn from your journey, what would those 3 top tips be?
So I actually wrote them down because, again, one on the Enneagram, perfectionism. So the first thing was to like get a vision and make a plan. And like I said earlier, the caveat to that is just, even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, because I feel like, again, there's a lot of people that don't know what they want to do, and that really stresses people out when they don't know. Everyone has an idea of what they're passionate about, what they enjoy doing. Explore that and see where it goes. Be open-minded, and like, but having a goal or a vision, or at least an idea of where you want to go, allows you to start taking steps and making a plan towards actually just doing something. So just starting something. It's like getting a plan, just doing something to work towards what you see for yourself. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing will be discipline gets you further than motivation does. Because honestly, if you want something enough, you make it happen. People always like, oh, I'm not motivated today. Cool. Most people are not motivated every single day of their life. Like, we're not all walking around with Steve Harvey in our pocket. Do you know what I'm saying? So, and it's one of those things where it's like, discipline is like an active decision. It's a choice you make every single day to do the things that you don't want to do, even though you should do them, and doing them well, because that's like consistency, and consistency, that's like the main thread of that. But the difference between inconsistency and consistency is literally just discipline. So yeah, have discipline in the things you want to do, because I also feel like people say, oh no, I'm just not motivated, I don't have discipline for that. Everyone is disciplined in at least one area of their life. There'll be one area of your life where you're successful. So if you can be successful in that one area of your life, why can you not apply it to all the other areas of your life? Active choices there, right?
Do you know what, in the back of my head, I have my dad's voice. When I was growing up, I used to love TV. Like, it was, I just enjoyed watching TV. And my dad would tell me, especially leading up to my 11 plus, he would just tell me, do you think all these people you're watching on TV are actually just sitting watching TV? They are working. And it reminds me of knowing when to work, and you know, the discipline of working hard so you can play hard. And knowing when to put in that extra energy and push yourself is so important. I think if you don't learn it, it makes the pursuit of purpose and going in the direction of God very challenging, because there are places you just won't go unless you learn discipline.
Indeed. And I like, even on the other side of that, discipline is also about knowing limitation. That's something people don't really say, and I want to say that because I wish I'd heard that. Discipline also looks like knowing when to say no to going out with your friends. Like, discipline, because you need to have an early night because you've got a 5 a.m. start time for that job that you really wanted. So it's about making discipline is like learning knowing what the limitation is within each thing. So yes, applying yourself and doing the things that you know you should do, but also knowing what things you shouldn't do in certain seasons of life, you know?
I love that. I love that.
And then the last thing I would say is, don't be afraid to ask for help or to get advice, or to just start the thing. Like, just taking a step of faith. Like, that's what that looks like. There are so many people willing to help, and all you have to do is ask. And I think sometimes we paralyze ourselves with fear because we're so afraid to say, like, what if they say no? What if someone says no? You'll literally be in the same situation you're in right now, but at least you asked. But what if they say yes?
What's the worst that's going to happen?
These are the exact things I used to tell myself, and it's literally paid off.
Yeah.
So you just don't know what could happen by just honoring what God's asked you to do. Like, God said, go and reach out to that person on LinkedIn, or, you know, go and help that person here. And like, even though you don't get paid for it, like, you just don't know what that could lead on to. So just ask for help, offer your help. You don't know, you could be an answer to someone.
This has been a breath of fresh air. Hannah, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Becoming Lovely. I think that the listeners, if you're listening, you are just taking it all in like I am. This has been such an amazing conversation, and I've taken like mental notes. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go back and listen to that. So thank you so much for joining me again. Where can we find you? For those of us that want to follow you and just tune into what you're doing, listen to your radio show, where can we find you?
Okay, so radio is premiergospel.org.uk, Fridays 9 to 11 p.m. On social, it's at Hannah Lovejoy, HANLOVEJOY, on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm going to put it out there that I'm doing TikTok slowly. Who knows? Let's see. Hold me accountable by putting it actually up there. And then I do have a Facebook page, but do people still use Facebook? I don't think they do.
No.
And then my website is hannahlovejoy.com as well. That's how you can find me online.
Guys, you heard it here. Go find Hannah on socials, go listen to her, and keep in touch with her. I think that she is definitely a bright light and an upcoming impact-driven woman in the industry, and I can't wait to see all the moves that are going to come out of this next season. Thank you again for tuning in. Make sure you like and share and subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment too. And if you have a little extra time, make sure that you rate this. It really helps us with getting the radio, or it really helps us with getting the podcast shared, and continue to tune in. Thank you so much for listening.